Welcome to the first episode of the WSA Football Podcast. The purpose of the show is to discuss topics within our game that the mainstream media does not cover, with the goal of educating fans, players, and coaches alike. We're going to get right into the topic of today's video, but it is definitely important for me to briefly explain who I am and my background to make a video about this topic. I'm a sports and entertainment lawyer originally from New York and was an FA registered intermediary for the 2017-18 and 2018-19 seasons, basically the last two prior to now. Prior to that, I worked for various football clubs both in MLS and England. Now, before we get right into it, there are a few overarching concepts that I think are important to discuss before we get into the specific numbers of each league. What I'm going to talk about today are the first 6 divisions in England, because those are truly where players are earning a salary that's worth talking about. The first 6 divisions, if you don't know, quickly are the Premier League, the Championship, League One, League Two, the National League, which used to be called the Conference, so if I call it the Conference, excuse me for that, and the National League North and South also used to be called the Conference North and South. Next, for the purposes of this video, we're talking about first-team players that are part of the traditional 18-man squad to give us an average of what players tend to earn in these leagues. Of course, you'll hear stories about players earning major money at a certain club that's extreme for that level, but I'm trying to give everyone a general overview of what goes on. The only exception to this is people are always curious about what first and second year pros at Premier League and top championship clubs make, so I'll start by discussing that. But other than that, we're talking about average wages in a given league. Another point is, if a club believes they could sell a player for a profit in the future, they will have higher wages because they are going to be able to recover the high wages with a transfer fee, and in effect, it's an investment in the player's future. On the flip side, players also can earn very high wages if they join clubs on a free transfer, because at the end of the day, a club is looking at what is the total cost to acquire this player, and the transfer fee, the player wages, it can all be looked at in the same way to know what this player is going to cost. But in general, we're talking about the middle players at a given club at a given level. So first and foremost, what do first and second year pros at Premier League and top championship clubs make? The range for first and second year pros at Premier League and top championship clubs could be anywhere from £250 a week to £1,000 a week, depending on the club. Of course, there's different levels of first and second year pros. Some of them could be England youth internationals, foreign youth internationals from other countries, but at more of your championship clubs, it could be £250. At some of your bigger Premier League clubs, it could be up to £1,000, but a lot of it is a set range in there, which at £250, you could make more money as an 18-year-old at a normal job. At £1,000, of course, you're not going to at 18, but overall, at 18 or 19 years old, you're at these clubs trying to break through into the first team, make a career in the game, and the wages don't really matter. It's enough to get by, help out at home with your family, maybe get a car, maybe have some spending money for the weekends. But overall, first or second year, you are trying to impress and make a name for yourself as an early pro in your career. Next, for National League North and National League South, also known as the 6th division within English football. Here, you have players earning anywhere from £350 to £600 a week, and that could include various bonuses, because now we're into the real professional level where results matter, unlike if you're playing at the under-23s as a first or second year pro. So here you could be on maybe a base salary of £400 a week. You get £50 for a win bonus, or maybe if you're a defender, you get £50 for a win bonus, £50 with a clean sheet also. If you're a goalkeeper, you can get a clean sheet bonus. But overall, the compensation is anywhere from £400 to £600. But again, if you're a younger player and you're at one of these clubs, you could be on lower wages. So it really varies, but your traditional player is on £400 to £600. Next is the National League, or the 5th division of British football. Here you have players that are earning higher salaries because most of them have been pros at larger clubs. They have a background in the game, they have experience, they tend to be a little bit older, and they tend to be more physical. And with this experience, clubs will pay higher wages. Additionally, the National League gets very, very high attendances for a fifth level league for anywhere in the world. A lot of these clubs can go on FA Cup runs, such as a few years ago when Sutton United wound up playing Arsenal. So these teams have fan bases, they can do well, and they're bringing in players from a very respectable level. So here, to keep it simple, the average National League player will make around £750 a week, possibly with a few bonuses for wins, goals, clean sheets, the same things we discussed for National League North and South. But at £750 a week for a fifth level club, that is unbelievable because nowhere else in the world as a fifth level footballer would you be earning such a good wage. Next is League Two, or the fourth division of British football. Here, the wages very much vary because in many cases the National League and League Two are very similar. The only difference is the League Two clubs are part of the traditional football league, or the first four divisions of British football. So overall here, to keep it simple, we could say players are on an average of £1,000 to maybe £1,500 a week, but at some of the smaller clubs you could still be making £750 like the National League, and some players could be earning even a little bit less. So the National League and League Two really depend on the financial standing of the club, how many fans they get at a game, because ticket revenue is a very big part of how the clubs are able to pay player wages. Additionally, it could depend on how many television appearances that club makes for a year, which links back to the FA Cup and how well a team does. But overall, the National League and League Two really depend on if a club needs a certain player, because the wages are actually very similar. Next up is League One, and this is where we really start to separate the players from lower level players that are maybe a little bit older and working their way down to players now that have truly made a very, very nice living in the game that possibly can't be recreated from getting a university degree and getting an office job. In the League One also, there's a big range between some of the larger clubs that have struggled, such as Sunderland, who used to be a Premier League club in recent years, and some smaller clubs that have traditionally been in League One. So here, on average, players are making anywhere from £2,000 to £3,000 a week, let's say on average. And again, it's very much a range, and it's hard to say because, of course, strikers tend to earn higher wages. A good goalkeeper can earn a very high salary. A good defender could earn a high salary. But here, too, these clubs will get players on loan from larger clubs, which is a different discussion altogether, possibly for a different video. But in general, League One is where you're talking about guys that are really earning a very, very nice living in the game, many of which were pros at Premier League clubs, made a few appearances. It didn't really pan out, and now they're going into League One to play at a very high level and play week in and week out. So again, League One is where it starts to get serious with major money. Next is the Championship, and the big dividing line here is between Championship clubs pushing for promotion, or those that were relegated from the Premier League the previous year, or normal Championship clubs. So you'll hear stories every couple of years where a Premier League club gets relegated and they have a player on their wage bill in the Championship making £100,000 a week. And the fans go crazy and everybody's upset, and how's this possible? But at the end of the day, all of these contracts are purely a negotiation. So if a player says that I'm only signing if my wages are X amount per week or per year, and if we get relegated, that's your problem, not mine. The club is stuck paying those wages. But in general, a normal Championship player is making anywhere from £3,000 to, let's say, £6,000 a week, which it's very good money, of course, and the Championship is an incredibly high level. It's one of the best second divisions in the world. In many cases, the Championship is a higher level than many countries' first division. But 3,000 to 6,000 would be the average for a normal championship club. So £6,000 a week, let's say that's £300,000 per year. The difference is, of course, at the championship clubs that are pushing for promotion, in order to get promoted, they need to pay much higher wages. And then you could see players on very, very high salaries, maybe 20, 30, 40,000 pounds a week. And then players that come in on loan could be earning even more money. So it really depends in the championship on the club's ambitions. But overall, your run-of-the-mill, which of course is no insult, I'm just saying run-of-the-mill for your average type of player within that league, we're talking about 250 to 350,000 pounds a year, including bonuses. When it's all said and done, that's a very, very high salary for an average player in the championship. Lastly is the Premier League, which isn't as much of a secret because you hear on the news players' wages being bounced around all the time by the media, their agents, clubs, and everybody in between talking about what Premier League players make. And here it gets very interesting because, similar to the Championship, you have clubs that are on a very high level and clubs that are on a lower level, and that very much varies because you have a club like Arsenal or Tottenham or Manchester United where they're generating gigantic worldwide revenue for their clubs, which of course lends itself to paying the players higher wages, compared to maybe a club like Watford or Brighton, where they don't have the international appeal and they're paying wages that are more in line with a domestic level club. But in general, the average Premier League salary is around £50,000 a week currently, or £2.5 million per year. But again, the Premier League is wide open because you have younger pros, like we discussed at the beginning of the video, that are working their way through. They're on maybe £1,000 a week, and then they start to play in the first team and they earn very large bonuses, which brings their salary up to a higher level. And then their contract could get renegotiated, and this is where you'll hear about players signing new deals in the middle of the season. But in general, if we go with £50,000 as an average, meaning you take Manchester City players, you take lower players in the Premier League, such as maybe Norwich, who were recently promoted, 50,000 would be the average, but you have clubs that have done very, very well paying lower wages. You have clubs that have even struggled that are paying high wages. But in general, it's anywhere from a base of probably £20,000 a week all the way up to, you could see players at the large clubs earning £200,000, £250,000. But of course, those are some of the best players of our generation, because clubs aren't going around paying £10 million a year to random players. There's always a reason for it. And most of those players are internationally capped. They've played in World Cups. They've won the Champions League. They've done things that truly make a difference. But the Premier League situation is very interesting because the range is so big. You could have a pro who is quite good on a base salary of £25,000 a week with some very nice bonuses. And you could have another player that maybe isn't performing as well that's on a base salary of £70,000. So it really makes for an interesting dynamic. But the bottom line is, any of the players at Premier League level that are actively involved in the games are earning a very, very nice living. The takeaway from the video today really is that British players earn very, very high salaries across all levels compared to the rest of the world. I understand it's no secret that Premier League and Championship players earn very high wages, but if you compare the salaries of League One, League Two, the National League, and National League North and South to the rest of the world, they're very, very good salaries, and what it all stems from is the popularity of the game within England. People love football, people love watching the games in person, and they love supporting their local clubs to a level that possibly isn't seen throughout the rest of the world, which allows for these lower-level players to earn a very nice living. The game in England is very, very well developed on the business side, and if players are successful and they can help their team, they will earn very high wages. So thank you very much for listening. I hope you enjoyed the first episode of this podcast. There will be more to come. And if you have any questions, comments, opinions, a critique on what we've discussed, feel free to leave a comment below and I'd love to discuss it.